When you look around at the world through these two eyes, your brain will tell you that this is reality, that what you see and hear and can touch and feel with your physical body, that this is reality, that this is real. And with that is a kind of subconscious programming that makes you believe that you know who you are when you look in the mirror. Reality is also truth. And so, of course, if your brain works like that and is telling you that what you see or hear or can touch, it's real, it's reality, it's truth, then of course you believe that you know who you are. Reality is limitless. It's boundless. And it's absolute. In its truest form, it is absolute, and it is beyond polarities, beyond up or down or black or white or here or there or man or woman. It's absolute energy and light. So can reality fit in a box? Can it fit within a thought, within a belief, within a place or some proportion of time? Can it fit in the body? Can it fit within the brain? Reality, given that it is limitless, it is therefore non-polarized. But the brain and the way that it works is through polarization. It has to polarize everything, put imaginary lines between everything. It's dependent on contrast, relativity. And the way that it works is that it has to put things in boxes. It has to label and categorize and define things. And so it's limited. And therefore, how much of reality, or how much of this reality or life or your own thoughts or beliefs are true? If you can only see so much or hear so much or experience so much in this polarized limitation that is the brain. Because reality being truth, but reality in its pure form is limitless. then how much is really real of what you see when you look around? This world that you know. So if reality is limitless, this truth is limitless and boundless, but the brain is of limitations. Reality is non-polarized, but the brain is polarized. So that means that what you perceive through your brain it's infinitesimally small in comparison to the reality that is infinite, which is a little bit hard to wrap your brain around. That means that what you see with your eyes and what you believe with your mind, that what you can experience, all of these narratives, these stories, it makes this world, this polarized world that you perceive through your brain, makes it almost non-existent. It may as well be a dream. Where you have up and down and black and white, you also have the outer and the inner. The inner domain is the domain of non-polarization, of reality and energy and light and spirit and love. But the outer domain, being the opposite to that, is the polarized domain. It's the domain of the brain. It's the domain of the body, the material, the narrative, the domain of fear. The inner domain is the domain of love. The outer domain is the domain of fear. The domain of the mind, the brain, and the inner is the domain of the heart. This outer domain is like, given that it is infinitesimally small, you can imagine it like the skin layer, like an almost non-existent shell or skin or topside layer to everything that is within. So the comparison it's just hollow and almost non-existent without anything that is of the inner domain. This is everything. And if reality is energy and light, it is also the life. Reality in its absolute is absolute life. Anything of the outer domain is strictly just the skin of that. The almost non-existent layer, an infinitesimally small fraction of the reality. But given that the outer domain is the opposite to the inner domain, it makes it kind of twisted. And if the inner domain is of energy and reality and truth and light and the spirit and love, it's also of naturality. And in comparison, this outer domain, this shell layer, this world that you perceive with your eyes, the flesh, the narrative, the stories, it's like artificial compared to the inner domain. But this is where most people are anchored. They're anchored to this outer domain. The domain of polarization, of contrast, of conflict and chaos, of stories and status and money and politics. And they are anchored there because they are mostly driven by fear. And if you're mostly driven by fear, you're revolving around fear. And if you're revolving around fear, it means your being and consciousness is locked to that domain, which means you're stuck and are a prisoner within the lines of this world. It means you are in a cage of the mind and you're chained to all of these things of this material world. It's the domain of attachment. But this has a good reason that most people are anchored there. Because when we look back, the way that we have been cultivated, or schooled, or manufactured, the way that we've been lied to, the way that we've been controlled and manipulated, the way that we've been twisted, and the way that we have been traumatized and hexed with fear into the blood, means that the moment your umbilical cord is cut, you're just going outer and outer and outer, because fear drives you out of love, because fear is the opposite to love. But love is of the inner domain, the domain of being and energy and the cosmos, the truth. So we're cultivated outside of that truth, and that takes us out of our power and out of our reality. Everything about this outer world, the education, the way we're raised and shaped, it's constantly pulling us, our consciousness and being with it, outside of the inner domain, which is a much larger part of what you are. It's everything. It is the life. And if the life is here, then where are we going? Because again, if you're cultivated with fear outside of this inner domain, but there's nothing of real substance in that domain, then what are you really living for? Who are you? What are you? And so, if we're born into the system of ego, into the system of fear and attachment, system of shadow, it means that we are breaking off like this. This is the inner and this is the outer. And we are separated from the inner. And then this inner falls. Our heart and inner domain and truth and being, it's being pushed down in this refined, systematic process of the way society and civilization has been bred into this outer world. So we're born to be lacking because we're missing everything within. And if we're missing everything within, but everything within is everything, which means all you can really be seeking for in life is something that is, but the only thing that is truth, spirit, the light. So what are you really searching for? What are you really doing in this outer world? What do these stories really mean? It makes everything of that reality a paradox. It doesn't really go anywhere. Every bit of information is just as much as information as any other information, just like science. Where are you really going with science? If there's no limits to what you can know or believe, it goes on and on and on. It makes it, in a way, whereby you're not really going anywhere. You're exactly where you are in the beginning. And no matter where you try to go, it's like you're always in the same place, which makes it kind of hamster wheel in that way. So if you're lacking this inner domain, like you're really anchored by fear, ruled by fear, but lacking within, it means you're trying to solve subconsciously this problem of something fundamentally missing within you. But because you're not taught the truth, the spirituality, compassion, empathy, all of these things, but we're educated on all of these narrative things, money, taxes, governments, all of this, then how do you know what's missing? You only see what's within the lines. And it means you're trying to subconsciously rekindle and find your way back, but you're only language for that, because all the truth was stripped from you. All the leaders were crucified and scattered and buried, and you're led by the unconscious. It means you go looking for it in a new car, in some point in time or place or person, endlessly attached. And if for whatever reason this narrative or your family or the things you're attached to, if it collapses and you become disattached and isolated, you start being forced to face what is here. But here is the truth and reality. And that starts to surface as you collapse inwards. Because you only know how to deal with money. Because you only know how to deal with these things that you've been programmed to understand, but there's no real proof that they exist, like governments. All of these things, therefore you don't know what you're really dealing with when you collapse inwards, when you come inwards. You don't really understand love. You understand it with a concept of the mind, but you don't really understand it in this inner domain, in experience and energy. So you don't know what to do with this place. You've not learned how to develop a cosmic muscle within that helps you transmute the energy. Because if you are anchored to the outer domain, and this is the outer domain, and this is the inner domain, then of course to transition into that, you have to go through a veil. And that veil is sitting right in the middle between the inner and the outer. And that's here in your heart. It's in your chest. But because again, if the outer domain is the opposite to the inner domain, that means they have to kind of twist and become opposites to each other. So if they're twisted off of each other, but you're anchored in this outer narrative, identity, this singular domain, then when you look back, when you look inwards, or when you try to understand the spirit or love, you don't realize it, but you demonize it. you see something opposite. A lot of people that are, anyone that is anchored to that outer domain, instead of feeling something, instead you're feeling empty. Because again, you've become this opposite. You're looking at naturality and energy through artificial and shaped, programmed eyes. So you don't see anything. And if you do feel something, if you're collapsing inwards enough, you don't like what you feel. You want to run from it, run back to attachment to some place, or try to find an identity or some form of bubble to get away from here. You're not learned how to work with energy. You don't understand it. We just weren't cultivated like that. And a lot of us have been forced to find out for ourselves. But of course, a lot of people, they kind of live in between, because they do have somewhat their heart there, but they're still ruled by fear, which means you still can't really see beyond the lines. But if you truly live by love and you honor God and the Spirit and the truth, and you live by that, no matter what, you revolve around that and you come more and more inwards into this inner domain, into the domain of the cosmos and of energy, then you begin to see and experience things that you can't possibly explain with words, because words are of that narrative, of this confined and limited domain, so they can't capture something that is beyond that. It's a much larger world in this inner domain. And these outer narratives are like so limited and such a baby and kindergarten level compared to, as you come inwards and inwards, you come into higher and higher truths, into cosmic narratives. And it gets wild. But because we're in a body, and the body is of a singular nature, it's a part of this outer domain. And the outer domain is not necessarily wrong. Just like you see a singular tree there and a singular tree there, but it's still close to the inner domain. It's coming from the source, and the source and its nature of energy and light is to shine outwards into the outer domain. And so if you have a body that's of this part, but you also come into the inner domain, it means you have the inner domain and the outer domain, rather than just being confined to the outer domain. And when you live like that, you live in balance. You live in a natural kind of cycle and current. You have this current where you have the energy that comes up and you express and live in the world and get to experience and see within and around the lines, within the narratives, around the narratives. And you, again, following that cycle, you come home and you come into the inner and you sit with the spirit and you gain your energy. And then you go back into the world in these cycles. But you have to make sure you come home. And that is why the world is the way that the world is. It's why it's gone into so much polarization and chaos. Due to fear. And it meant that it's created lost children. Children that abandoned the source. They abandoned God. And they didn't return home. And instead they try to build fortresses in many ways, build a stronghold here, a strong attachment, a way of pushing down the inner domain by pushing down the heart and the feeling and the truth and the processes to create a kind of strong delusion, a bubble that prevents them from coming here. And so many beings are just cultivated like that, subconsciously just doing the same thing, just not returning home. But again, if this inner domain is home and of reality, and reality is of truth, it means that no matter what you do or who you become, whatever status you have, and no matter how much money you have, whatever you do out there, it means inevitably you will have to face reality. You will have to come back to the inner domain of reality one way or another. It's just a matter of time. And so without love in your heart, without truth in your heart, without living from your spirit, from the inner and into the outer, it means you're caged to the mind, to the brain, to status, to materiality, to money. Caged in an infinitesimally small cage of fear